I think it's so important that we don't lose. Sure, we can move forward into the future. We can, innovation, like you said, that it's also tech focused, which to me is like that pulls us so far away from what we truly are. We are not mechanical beings. We are biological beings. We are
Yeah.
of the earth. And to move away from that, which I think there, I don't care if this sounds conspiracy. There is an agenda to move us away from that, to
Yeah.
disconnect us from our ancestors, our origins, etc. I just love hearing you talk about this because you're somebody who is, we are the same age, and you're like, I'm going to drive this home farther in the work that I'm doing to make sure that it doesn't get lost.
It's nice to hear that this resonates with you, and yeah, it makes sense with your work. And I think that there's an appetite for this from a
Yeah.
lot of people, from a lot of designers, from a lot of creatives. And I feel lucky that I get to do this and that I find opportunities like this. But I think that there is a whole bunch of people that are also wanting to reconnect, with
Yes.
their ancestral practices, with their communities, with where they come from, with where their parents come from. If there's such a huge appetite, hopefully it's a trend that we can continue to build on. And people like you and me, creative designers, have an opportunity to create those spaces and to build those communities.
Welcome back to Graphic Content, the podcast where we talk all things who, why, and the what the moments along the way. I'm your host, Gio, and what's on brand for me this week is digging into storytelling and being much more interested in the why than the highlight reel. My guest today is Pablo Muñoz, Colombian-Canadian designer, storyteller, community builder, and founder of Narrative Shift, a studio creating human-centered campaigns, films, and public space projects for nonprofits, cultural organizations, and cities across North America. Pablo has spent over a decade working in government and the nonprofit world before having a very honest, I can't do this anymore moment. The kind that leads you to quit your job, trust your creativity, and finally use the name you've been saving for years. His work sits at the intersection of design, culture, and community, from documentary storytelling to large scale bamboo installations inspired by his Colombian roots. He loves birds, dancing salsa, is a plant zaddy, and is the type of person to go to bed excited to wake up to have a coffee. Present included.
True story. True
Pablo,
story.
welcome to. I'm the same, honestly. Welcome to Graphic Content, Pablo.
Thank you so much for having me.
I honestly love the fact that you are now. Where are you currently? You're in Colombia,
I am in Cali, Colombia. Yeah.
and what brought you there?
My family lives here. Yeah, I had the opportunity to come and spend a few months this winter, so here I am.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I say this to every guest. I'm like, wow, like thanks for making time to talk to me. I always feel so honored that anyone would take time out of their schedule. And I just see all of the amazing things that you're doing. And it was something that, having known you now for a few years through passing, I think we've crossed paths from the Toronto days when I was living there. And to see what you're doing is really instrumental. I think it's a really interesting approach to design.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah, likewise. I mean, I've been seeing your work, and I'm happy to come and chat design. Like I'm
Hmm.
always open. Creativity and design is a big part of my life, and having the opportunity to chat about it is super welcome.
It's one of those things where I don't necessarily get the chance to do that every time I talk to somebody because, everyone's
Hmm.
in different industries and everybody always has like different approaches to what they do. But with you, especially going through your work and your history and all the things that you have done, I'm like, okay, we can dig into it because I'm like, finally, like, not that I don't
Let's do
love the
it.
yes. So you and I have very similar let's say exits from our like old lives. So talk to me a little bit about like what led you to where you are today.
Okay. I mean, I want to hear that about that exit later too, but yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, actually, I had been working in government and not for profit for 10 years. Um, towards the end, it got to a point where I just felt like I wasn't growing. I felt like I wasn't
Hmm.
learning. Um, there was a lot of emergencies, a lot of culture of urgency that at the end of the day, I'm not sure I was seeing it was resulting in you know the things we thought we were doing. Um,
Yeah.
the level of urgency wasn't actually matching the output of the work that we were doing. There's a lot of projects that I feel incredibly proud to have worked in, and the skill set that I built over that time, I see the value of it in my work day to day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty rigorous with my process, with my note taking, with all that kind of stuff, and that is definitely something that I learned through working in government. And it makes for my client relationships. Makes things very clear, the
Hmm.
documentation, that process. So I totally welcome that, and definitely learned a lot through that process. But yeah, it got to a point where I was like, I need to actually be using my creative skills and not just answering Slack messages. And I said, let's do it. Let's take the leap.
So what led you to that? Because I know that story so well, where you're in this situation where you're like, I'm not being utilized in the way that I know I can be. I think that there's like a shrinking of the power of who you are, and like you're, and not just you, I'm saying people in general, that you kind of have to shrink to fit into these roles where you know I'm working for a larger entity, conglomerate, etc. And then you come to the point where you're like, I don't like I can do this without these
Yeah.
these limitations, right? And so for you, like, was there like an actual moment where you're like, I gotta get out?
Yeah. To be honest, ever since I graduated university, I knew I wanted to create something of
Hmm.
my own. And I was scared. There were, and rightfully so, right? Like
Yeah.
you have the comfort of sick days, of a pension, of a stable paycheck, of all these different things. I had to build up the courage and also the funds, right? Like you need to be
Yeah.
able to have the resources in order to start your own thing. You can't just kind of quit everything, and bills have to be paid at the end of the month. So
Yeah.
it was a combination of all the things. I was able to make a plan. I was able to see what the next steps were going to be, and I literally got to a point where I felt a little burnt out, and I felt like I was just putting one foot in front of the other.
Hmm.
It just didn't feel right. And I think a lot of people felt that also post pandemic. Like, I think a lot of people realized that these kind of like office culture is not really human. It's a lot of,
Yeah.
it's, we shrink ourselves, we shrink part of ourselves in order to be in the
Hmm.
spaces. And it's funny because we all do it. So I'm wondering, what are the ways that we can all take an active role in deconstructing a lot of this? And for me, it all kind of came together. It's like, okay, it's time to take the leap, as I said, and go at it on my own, and try to make a new thing altogether.
I want to like give this caveat because as much as I've talked about this story before, like my story of, working in corporate, working for agency, and then going out on my own. And sure, we can look back and say, oh, it was bad or it didn't work for me or whatever. But you said it perfectly earlier. It really does set the foundation for where both of us are today. Like I would not have, I think, the work ethic to the
Yeah.
extent that that urgency piece you mentioned. That is something that I don't do anymore. Like it's like I don't have that in
Hmm.
my life, and I work with my clients and we're like, okay, let's set a deadline. I don't ever feel stressed about delivering work. I haven't felt that in years.
Same.
It'll be 9 years I've been on my own this year. And I haven't felt that in about five, I'd say, where, to me, you learn or like, okay, what do I want to bring forward and what do I want to leave behind? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I also haven't felt that. I mean, yeah, of course, like you have uh, deliverables and deadlines and things that need to get done, but that like it, high level stress. We all need to get this done, and I that's a little manufactured, to be honest.
Yeah.
We kind of, because, and in the sense that it happens so often, and we don't meet that deadline, and things still go on. So we end up realizing that those kind of urgencies are kind of made up, and then it devalues all the other work as well, right? So there are ways that we can decenter that and work in ways that are a little bit more human and humane. Yeah.
One of the topics that seems to be, as I've talked to so many people, I think now you're my 45th guest, which is pretty
Cool.
awesome. And I've seen through all the conversations that I've had, because at the end of the day, like I'm talking to people who are carving out their own paths, who are leading themselves and designing the life that they want to have. That's the kind of the theme with everybody across the board.
Hmm.
But I see this thing of like, oh, this outs like from hold on, how do I say this, seeing the potential of what you can do based on what you're not doing currently. That's kind of what is like a through line. And one of the things that you had said in your intake form, which really like stood out to me, was the sentence of, there are people who get to do what they love every day. Why can't I be one of them? That is something that it really like sat with me, because that's exactly where I'm at today. And so like for you, not to sit too long in like the past, but
Hmm.
with that feeling in your heart where you're like, okay, I gotta make a shift. Like how did that play out for you in your story, in your timeline, let's say?
Yeah. I mean, that sentence is something I said to myself like after I had quit, and I had like, I
Mm,
think a month. It was a month or 2 months notice that I gave, because there was a lot of stuff to kind of wrap up. And as I got scared, I said to myself, people do this all the time. You're not
yeah.
that special, for one. uh, but also you can do this. You can totally do this. why
Mhm.
why can't you be one of the people that does what they love every
Yeah.
day? I know that there's privilege in that. Like, you do, like, as I mentioned, you can't just, if you have a family, it's a lot different. Like, if you have kids, for
100%.
example, like, but I found myself in a position where it's like, no, you finally have the opportunity to do what you've always wanted to do.
Hmm.
So, you know, go into it head first, like commit to it. It's something that I said out loud. I literally said out loud repeatedly. People get to do this all the time. Why don't
Hmm.
you get to be one of them? And it kind of helped me. Yeah.
I'll say this because you mentioned privilege. I want to say that your approach to what you do and my approach to what I do very similar. At the end of the day, I find that, I this is my like 2026 mantra of kind of trying to say to myself over and over again is my whole ethos is around helping people step into their greatness, whether it's through the
Hmm.
brands I create, the stories I tell, the episodes of the podcast, like having it's about others. And so
Hmm.
yes, as a gay man, I don't have a family. I can do what I want much more freely, but we are doing it in order to help others. And not to sound cheesy or Oprah or whatever, but it really is that. And so it's like, we use that thing that's available to us in to help others. I really believe that. And that's something that there has to be, we can say, yes, there's privilege, but it's like we're doing it for, in some ways, beyond us. It's not just about us, right?
When I work with my clients, I mean, I have two different streams to my work. There's my artwork, which
Hmm.
is part of my studio, Narrative Shift Studio, and then there's kind of like my design work and my client-based work. And I believe that when I'm working for a client, it isn't about my ideas at all. What I'm doing is creating a process so that the ideas of my clients and of their communities are reflected, and I create a process so that you know it is their work that comes out, and I'm just facilitating it.
The
As a
conduit.
designer, yeah, part of what we have to do is decenter our own stuff. Of course, we bring our skills, and we do bring including our artistic skills, illustration, all that kind of stuff. But what my I believe my role is to just kind of facilitate and create a process, and it is about the communities and the client that I'm working for sure.
I always say that. I'm like, when I work with clients, I'm like, I'm the conduit. I'm not like I bring what I bring, but it really would not the final result would not exist without you, without the collaboration, without that partnership. It doesn't I can't get to that point without there being a back and forth. Because a lot of times, I'm sure you've come into these conversations where it's like, oh, like I don't know, and you do you, and it's like, but yeah, but I need you to give me something. We got to work together, right? Like, this isn't about me.
Yeah, and that's how you arrive at something that folks are happy with and that has longevity
Hmm.
when it comes from the client. It is great when you're giving sufficient liberty and to do X, Y, and Z, but the answer has to come from the problem itself, from the client.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit about narrative shift. So when you finally left and you started, what was the initial feeling around? Okay, I'm doing this thing.
It was, I didn't fully believe it, to be honest. Like at the beginning, it's like I'm doing it. I launched. I'm kind of I have a few clients, but there's a bit of you is like, okay, how long is this gonna last? Or like,
Mm.
what? It's kind of like that inner saboteur that like, okay,
Oh yeah.
what if this fails or whatever? My first clients were really interesting projects. I worked with Healing Lodge at Six Nations, Round Run, Hummingbird Healing Lodge, that does some incredible work for uh, restoration and for taking care of community leaders and activists. And that work was very meaningful. Just the first few projects that I got felt like I was heading in the right direction. I felt more meaning from those first few projects than a lot of the work I had been doing over the last year. As I went on, that feeling of doubt ended up just being becoming there were a lot of indications that I was on the right path. Every now and then that doubt did kick in and something else happened that reassured me that I was moving in the right direction. And eventually, it just kind of kept building from there.
What do you think in those early interactions in the work and your engagement in it? What made you feel like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. Like this is the real deal.
I mean, it was the reaction from my clients who were also, most of my early clients were people that I had worked with in one way or another that were part of my community in one way or another. Seeing their reaction, seeing, you know, every design process starts maybe with a little bit of doubt. We don't know each other yet. We are kind of framing the problem. And then by phase two, when they're starting to see some of their ideas reflected and they're like, oh my God, yes. And then they start taking a little bit of ownership of the process. Like, well, we're actually going to head in this direction. I love that. That's the
Hmm.
point where I know that we're heading in the right way. And seeing just like when you present, let's say I'm working on on a branding project and you present three mood boards and they're like, it's that one, it's that one, it's 100% that one. You're like, okay, that feels great, right?
Yeah.
You're heading that the work is taking shape and that you're heading in the right direction. And when people are like actually smiling towards the end of the process and they're like, yep, this is it. Those are kind of the indicators for me.
I love hearing you say that because I feel like you and I have very similar approaches. Maybe not the details of how our process goes, but I feel that when it comes to that connection piece, that empathy, that understanding of what is the story we're telling, who are we telling it to, and why, and really understanding it beyond just aesthetics. I think that, especially now in the world that we live in, we need to be connecting with humans in this. I keep saying this with a lot of my clients that are like, AI, AI. I'm like, you're not going to get that connection. You're not going to
No.
understand that through line of how to cut through the noise,
Yeah.
in especially online. How do you cut through the noise and really connect? And I'm curious to know like those early stage, like we're talking early when you talked about getting to know the client. What is your
Mhm.
approach? Because I kind of want to compare notes.
Yeah. What is my approach? I mean, as I mentioned, with most of my clients, I've had a relationship in one way or another, or I know
Yes.
them from community, or I know their work. So there is a baseline, I guess, there. There are the kind of meetings where we're just getting to know each other, and I'm explaining the way that I work, and I'm trying to understand what their goals are. To that first workshop, there's always a workshop. Some people call it a discovery workshop, call it, kind of whatever it is.
Hmm.
But in that workshop, a big part of what I'm trying to do is understand their story. So tell me your story. Tell me the entire story. Where did you start? What were some key milestones? Where are you going? What are all the different players? And people tell it in different ways, and people love actually that moment of telling you their story and to think about it.
Yeah.
You don't always think about what that story is. And I will write it all down. I think, well, as I mentioned, those skills of working in government were like I'm incredibly fast at typing and producing almost verbatim minutes and grabbing quotes that I can then pull it all together. It's like, this is the story that I heard. This is what
Hmm.
you told me your story was. And then the last part of it is like, okay, well, this is your story. What is the next chapter? Where do you want to go now? What are things missing? How can the work that we do together take you to that next step?
100%. I have had a lot of feedback from clients, especially after the process. Those initial talks, those conversations about, what are you really like, where are we going with this? Like, what's the goal? Who are you, etc. And they've come back to me being like, I never even considered this. I never, and you're making me really think about like my ethos. Why? Like, what are we doing? And that to me has been a really interesting shift in their approach to it versus like, oh, I just want a website and a brand. And it's like they
Yeah,
really get involved in the process. And then you can see that spark, that switch in them where they're engaged because you're engaging them in parts of themselves that they're not even considering. They're just thinking like, oh, I got this business, blah, blah, blah. Right. And that to me
right.
is that's the like, you get them right off the bat, like in the early stages. I think that's it's special. It's so cheesy, but it's true.
Usually a client comes to you saying, I need a logo,
Hmm. Yeah.
or I need a website, or I
Yes.
want a video. As you know, their role is kind of like, well, why, or
Hmm.
or what is it that you wanted to do?
Hmm.
And that's the part that kind of comes in, and yeah, people are happy to take a pause and to think about that. I mean, and I'm curious about what you find as a consultant. You're not inside the organization, and it is an opportunity to work a little bit differently. Perhaps there are all these demands when you're inside of the organization, all these things that you have to accomplish, but there's a little bit more liberty, I think, when somebody is external and comes in and ask a few questions, and you invite people to something that is a little different.
Yeah, 100%. So through that process, was it always from day one your focus to have that human centered design? Like that's something that I talk about as well. To me, it's like it's human centered design. I say that all the time to my clients, especially like I'm driving it home. This is about that connection piece. So for you, is that always from day one something that you considered, or has that kind of evolved over time?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I went to OCAD for industrial design, and I focused a lot of my work, my studies on design strategy. Um, but one of the things that always stood out to me was that I was learning a lot of the things that I actually learned in community. So when I was, a community organizer, in my teens or early 20s or whatever, there was a lot of processes where we wanted to bring the community in, and we wanted to get everybody's ideas, and we would do different activities, different exercises, all this kind of stuff. And when I went to university, I realized, wait, a lot of these things that we label kind of like participatory design, or a lot of these exercises are exercises that I was already doing in community, or there's a lot of parallels between these two things. So I think a big part of my foundation for design and community centered, human centered design actually came from that experience. and then maybe I learned the language a bit better for it, or I learned a few different tools in university. My experience uh, at, at in university was many different things, but altogether I did learn a lot. You know, a lot of people go to university and it's like, I don't know what I learned. I know what I learned. There was quite a bit of skill. So I think it got a little bit more solidified through that, and I carried that through all of my work, even as I was working in government, and even as I was working in the not-for-profit sector. I always try to bring design strategy in one way or another, propose things in one way or another, and make sure that we were considering the final person affected first. If it was policy, you know, I would ask us to consider who uh, the end user was going to be, how that person was going to be affected. So I think, yeah, if you're asking where it started, I think it started from community. It kind of got fine tuned and perfected at university, and then of course I learned it. I learned to perfect it all through, I guess, my professional life.
I think we were at OCAD at the same time.
Maybe.
I
Where
like now
I guess
that
that was like 10 years ago.
I I was there. Okay, no, I was there in from '07 to 2011.
No, I was in Vancouver at that point. I think I got there
Okay,
to 2015, so just after you.
Tw- so no, then I just know you from Toronto.
Yeah.
On that note, so talking about like impact and community, when you're coming into a project, you're talking with clients or you're working with a group and explaining, okay, this is how we're going to approach our work together, etc. Like, how do you explain when people hear like human centered design? It sounds like fluff, right? Like it can sound like fluff. And so, like, how do you explain that it's more than just a design related? Like, how do you approach it?
You know, to be honest, I don't use a lot of that language with my clients. Like, I'll use it with folks that understand it, but I think uh, yeah, there's a lot of kind of, let's call it jargon, that I don't necessarily bring in. I think focusing on their goals is the primary thing.
Hmm.
Focusing on what they want to do, focusing on what the communities that they're working on, and bringing that all the time, naming them by name. Is kind of what I how I do that. I think, you know, we can get really lost. I mean, talking to designers is great. I love it because I actually get into like the details and all that kind of stuff. And but with a client, I try not to use jargon. Just speak the language that they are speaking. Use
Hmm.
the nomenclature that they're using. Don't say end user. Just name the person that it is. Say so and so. How is so and so going to see it? How is this particular person going to see it? Decenter your own education, nomenclature, jargon, all that kind of stuff. I think that that's the most effective way that I found.
From the early days, okay, I've always been someone who, like, we know what we know, we've learned what we've learned in our careers on our side of things as creatives, as designers. And I never went into any interaction with a client trying to sound a certain type of way. Like, oh,
Hmm.
this is, we're gonna I never use terms that are like crazy to them because I'm not trying to
Hmm.
sound bougie or like smart. Like, I'm like, let me just meet you where you're at. Let's just
Yeah.
talk like normal humans. I'm not going to over explain. I'm not going to, and that has been something that honestly I get a lot of feedback on, is like, oh, you make it way less complicated. I think it's way more complicated in my
Great.
head going into it.
Yeah.
And that to me has really, like, it brings the interactions almost like to like a level space,
Hmm.
and where I'm not coming in being like, let me show you, these are the things, and then confuse them. I'm like, what do you need? I'm not going to try and sell you on something that you don't need. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Sometimes you see that and I'm like, what are we doing?
I think a big part of it for me was also, you know, when I was working, you know, in government, whatever, we'd work with a lot of consultants that came in with language that was overly complex, perhaps that weren't
Yes.
fully understanding the issues. That's when I was like, okay, we need to find a way to make sure that this is actually accessible. Also realizing that design is one way of articulating issues. They might have a different name for what we consider design. As I mentioned, when I was working in community, there were all these different processes and activities and so on and so forth that I then kind of integrated into design. But design exists everywhere. Everybody has ways of solving problems.
Hmm.
And that the way that they arrive at those solutions is design. We have one name for it, other people might have different names for it.
A big part of this show is talking to people about their what the moments. We all come up against them. We all have them in our lives as we are carving out these paths for ourselves. And one of the things that stood out to me that you had written about in our exchanges before jumping in this call was that in the creative process, a lot of the time, there's at least one like what the fuck moment that comes up where something like clicks, something that surprises you in the process. So, can you walk me through one of those moments where the work revealed a story or something came up before anything was really like put out?
Yeah, I love this question, and I guess like the core of your show. But I can think of two things I want to
Hmm.
share. One of them is I was working on the visual identity for Justicia, which is grassroots organization that advocates for the rights of migrant workers in Ontario and in BC. And they were working with a very rudimentary logo that was, and it was just a logo. It wasn't a visual identity system at all. That had this fist and a tomato, and we knew that we wanted to, through our conversation, we knew we wanted to feature more prominently workers and feature them in the visual identity in the logo. I started developing these sketches the featuring a figure of a farm worker. And as I was doing the sketches, one of them really looked like the sticker you would see on a banana or the sticker that you would see on a tomato at the grocery store. And I was like, this is it.
Hmm.
This is perfect. So I leaned on that a little bit more and kept leaning on that a little bit more until we got to the final logo. And when I presented it to partner, my client, they were like, yes, this is it. And that to me was a what the moment, because you're just following the process. You're just going, and suddenly this very clear answer kind of comes up. I didn't go up into it saying, the logo should look like the sticker on a fruit.
Yeah.
But of course, it makes sense. It's such a clear story. People kind of connect to it very easily, and it opens up a lot of different campaigns. It opens
Hmm.
up a lot of different opportunities. So that one was a clear what the moment. The other one that kind of jumps out is I'm working on a short documentary with the Salish Firekeeper Society. So these are communities in the interior of BC that have historically used fire as a way to bring down the fuel load, bring down the bush buildup, and to bring nutrients back into the soil, so that there aren't, I mean, there's all these community benefits and there's all this soil benefits and environmental benefits. It was legislated that people couldn't do this, and that's why we have so many wildfires, because
Mm.
the ecosystems actually need fire. But as I was working on this project and doing the interviews and working, it was revealed to me, or was shared with me, that this idea that wildfires are just an inevitable kind of part of modern life, like that's not true. We can actually fix this. We actually have, and by we, indigenous people, have the knowledge, the relationship with the environment, in order to solve this. And that is a huge realization, huge. Why isn't this more commonly known? So part of what we're doing is trying to tell the story of the fact that we have all these skills, and we don't have to see our forests burn every summer. We don't have to, you know, have massive flash floods every spring. We have what it takes to fix this.
Those moments when they come up, there's levels of knowledge, but there's intuition. I don't know how woo woo you are, but like I truly believe that when we are like aligned with our purpose and what it is that we are meant to do on this earth through the vessel of work, if it's in alignment with who we are, these downloads happen and we have these moments of true connection to, the greater story, who we're helping, what we're about, etc., whatever, fill in the blank thing.
Hmm.
So as these moments are happening for you and you're going through the process, like how does that make you approach the next project and the next work that you do? Like how, where does that bring you in your understanding of self in that situation?
Yeah, I like that question. So, as I mentioned, I believe in design process, but I'm also human, and you also have doubt. And in every creative process, there will be a moment where you doubt yourself, and when you're like, I don't know, this isn't working, or I hate this. You'll get that. And what you have to do is go back and trust. It's cliche, but trust the process. Trust the
Hmm.
process, or go back to the process. I recently rebranded Narrative Shift and went through the whole rebranding process, and I think I shared that with you.
Hmm.
And of course, at the beginning, I wanted to skip steps. I'm like, no, I'm the designer. Why do I have to do 3 mood boards? Why do I have to do all this kind of stuff? I know where it's going. And of course, that's not true. Of course, I did needed to kind of step back, because you end up leading to a lot of indecision. Everybody in this day and age suffers from decision paralysis. Everybody's
Uh-huh.
like, and a big part of that is because we have to justify to ourselves, we have to tell a story of why we got there, and that's what design process allows you to do, to justify and to defend to yourself and to others what the decisions are. So what all of this kind of teaches me is that don't cut corners, and trust, and trust the process. As cliche as it sounds, just trust the process. Put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be way more happy with the results. And that's also one of the things that I tell my clients. If you allocate the resources, the more resources you allocate to this, the happier you will be, the more longevity your visual identity will have, the more longevity your story will have, the more people will resonate with if you commit to it now.
For anyone listening who wants to work with either of us, this is the truth. The amount of times I'm like, invest, it's an investment. Like, what are you,
It's
don't
an
look at
investment,
this,
yeah.
right? Like, it's not just something you like throw at the wall and say, okay, it looks cool, let's move on. It's like, you want this to last the next 20 plus years. I never go into it thinking like, oh, you're gonna rebrand. I'm like, you keep this as is, like as long as possible.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, you're also saving money in the long run. Um,
100%.
Saving money, and also potentially, making more money, whether
Yeah.
that you are somebody who's making money, or or an organization who's not. But because the more resources you invest to it, the more you can connect with the person you want to connect with. The
Hmm.
broader that audience is going to be, the broader that customer base is going to be, and it means that you are not going to have to rebrand, in 5 years. That this isn't going to look outdated in 5 years. That is going to last a really long time. And when you create something that is not following trends, that is speaking to your identity, it can last forever. It can last a really long time.
Hmm. So why did you decide to rebrand at this point in time?
My first visual identity was barely a visual identity. It was just putting stuff together and say, I need something to just have a website and to have a place. I wasn't fully sure, what my value was. I didn't really know what my full client base was going to be. Um, and it's been a year now. It was a year, like last November, which is kind of when I started the rebranding process. And it's like, I think I have a better understanding of what I want to do, of who my clients are, what my value is. Um, let's do it. I also, I came to Colombia. I came back home to, to be with my family for the winter. And I wanted Colombia to influence this process in one way or another. Everything was kind of lining up in that sense. I had the time as well. You need time to do this. And I said, let's do it. Now is the time.
It's difficult
Hmm.
when you do it for
Yeah.
yourself. Like, have you worked with people to help you, or are you just doing it on your own? Like, what's that process been like? Because, asking for a friend.
Yeah, there are definitely friends, designers, creatives that I trust that I ask for feedback. Asking for feedback is also really you have to know when to ask for feedback because it can confuse you. It can
Yes.
confuse you a lot more. You have to know who to ask for feedback. Um,
Hmm.
I have some clients that I'm very close with that I was able to ask for feedback at very specific moments, and it was really helpful. But also at one point, you just have to trust your own gut. You have to make decisions yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is challenging to do it on your own for sure.
Oh yeah. I've been in the process of doing it over the last 4 or 5 months, just
Okay.
updating things here and there. I'm like, okay, I wanna, because I'm not doing like a complete overhaul because I just don't
Mhm.
have the space, but I'm as I go, which once again, like I'm not necessarily following my own process because then
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm not like 100% on board because I am realizing that I do need to sit down with myself. But it's very difficult. It's like trying to write a bio about yourself. I'm like, can someone else do this for me?
I agree. But one of the things that helped to me as well was using it as an opportunity to audit my own process. When you present some options to a client, there's usually you folks take a while. I'm actually waiting on my clients more often than they're waiting on me, and I
Mm,
get it. When you're doing your own branding, you get it. You're like, okay, you have when you make a decision, you have to live with it for a while. So that was kind of helpful. But yeah, what have you found helpful through this process?
I think the biggest thing is understanding myself,
Hmm.
and not even just me, as because it's not there's me, Geo, but then there's the entity of the business. It's like we're
Yeah,
separate, but they're also, I don't care what anyone says, they're woven together. Like you can't
100% for sure.
I can't say, I'm currently working with a coach, and she's like, you have to say we, like we, the business we, and I'm like, I am having the hardest time doing that because I'm not coming at it from this like corporate lens. It's me, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that is really helping me to suss out how I want to approach it, or what my messaging is really honing in on what are my values, what is it that I want to do in this with my work. It's not just about helping you look good. It's like, what are we, like we've been saying, right? What is the
Mhm.
approach, and how is my ethos as a human being, and translating that, in which is not easy when you're doing it for yourself. I find when
Yeah.
I can easily talk to somebody and pick up who they are, what they want. Like I get a vibe for them instantly. That's kind of one of my, like, I like, I'm good at that. I can confidently say that's something that is a skill, but
Hmm.
doing it for me, I'm like, I don't know. And it's like I really have to like clear out the noise and like sit
Yeah.
and really feel
Yeah.
what are we about,
Yeah. And I think that what I mentioned about being in Colombia, that's one of the things that really helped me.
Major.
Just like you're in a different mindset altogether.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that kind of help with that. Changing your environment sometimes helps refocus in a different way.
And for you, I'm sure there has to be something about going back, like those foundations of self, like that has to be pivotal. And as we evolve as humans, it's always good to take a step back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I want to talk to you a little bit about you had talked about, how do I pronounce this, the
Guadua architecture.
Guadua,
Yeah.
they are bamboo architecture.
Yeah.
So this is something that you've wanted to explore for years. You had mentioned in your intake. And so what did working with that material and moving into this new project unlock for you creatively, emotionally, etc.?
like I've always wanted to work with it. It's true. Since I was a kid, I've always wanted to work with it. Guadua, it's a mouthful. Everybody tells me it's a type of bamboo that grows exclusively in Colombia. It's incredibly strong. It has all of these different properties, um, and I had always wanted to take the time to come and take a course. It's a vernacular process in the sense that like everybody uses it in the countryside, from making houses to making tools to making dishes to making like absolutely anything. It's an incredibly versatile material. You know, if I was still working a 9 to 5 job, I wouldn't have been able to take 3 weeks out of my time to do an immersive class. It was a fully immersive class. We were doing 16-hour days. We lived with
Wow.
a group of 15 of us, where we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We woke up before sunset. We went to bed at like 7. There was no phones, there was no nothing,
I love it.
and we really got to connect with the material itself, and also with the way that it's grown, with the ecosystem, with the harvesting, with all of it. It was definitely a transformational experience. I think when we think about innovation and technology, we are thinking about the digital space. We're thinking about all these other things. And to me, this is innovation. This is, it is ancestral, but it's also modern and current. There's a lot of Colombian designers that are integrating it into their artwork, into crafts, into big architectural pieces, into public art pieces. And I wanted to integrate it into my own practice as well. It is still something that is new to me. I'm kind of shaping a few different projects for the summer. They're not fully articulated yet, but yeah, we'll see how that kind of develops. I want to work with Colombian community and with indigenous communities in Canada. I'm also very curious about how you can't get guadua in Canada, but you can get bamboo grown in BC, and there's species that come from Japan. So part of the project that I want to do is a research project where we explore how are the techniques from Colombian manufacturing, guava manufacturing, how can they apply to a Canadian context with bamboo that is grown in BC. So
Hmm.
those are the big questions that I'm kind of exploring at the moment, kind of general ideas, and we'll see how that kind of develops. But at the core, and to your question, is innovation isn't always digital, isn't always a digital space, and more. Even though I work primarily in a digital space, I'm encouraging my clients and my collaborators and my partners. Let's work together. Let's work in person. Let's take things
Hmm.
offline. Offline is a mess, anyways. We need to be building relationships with one another, and we need to be building relationships with our ecosystems and with our environment. And this material is exactly that combination.
I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your butt, but like I genuinely love everything you're saying, even just from the beginning of this interview. Like your approach is so in line with my perspective on how we need to move forward. I think it's so important that we don't lose. Sure, we can move forward into the future. We can, innovation, like you said, that it's also tech focused, which to me is like that pulls us so far away from what we truly are. We are not mechanical beings. We are biological beings. We are
Yeah.
of the earth. And to move away from that, which I think I don't care if this sounds conspiracy. There is an agenda to move us away from that, to
Yeah.
disconnect us from our ancestors, our origins, etc. Like my parents are immigrant. My father has so many approaches to specifically gardening. He's a farmer,
Hmm.
and just how he talks about like the moon cycles and understanding when energetically there needs to be like plant seeds planted, and approaches to tending to the dirt and all of these things, that it's like it's our generation's responsibility to not let the loss of, or the disconnect from the previous generations happen. And it's easier
Hmm.
said than done because once again we are bombarded with this connection, which is the digital connection, and it really dilutes the essence of like where we come from. I don't know, I'm rambling, but like I just love hearing you talk about this
Yeah.
because you're somebody who is we are the same age, and you're like, I'm going to drive this home farther in the work that I'm doing to make sure that it doesn't get lost.
It's nice to hear that this resonates with you, and yeah, it makes sense with your work. And I think that there's an appetite for this from a
Yeah.
lot of people, from a lot of designers, from a lot of creatives. And I feel lucky that I get to do this and that I find opportunities like this. But I think that there is a whole bunch of people that are also wanting to reconnect, with
Yes.
their ancestral practices, with their communities, with where they come from, with where their parents come from. If there's such a huge appetite, hopefully it's a trend that we can continue to build on, and people like you and me, creative designers, have an opportunity to create those spaces and to build those communities.
I think it's coming hard and fast. I
I hope
feel
so.
especially yeah, because how can we keep doing what we're doing? I'm sorry, but we're seeing everything is crumbling because it's not sustainable. This
Yeah.
movement towards it's disconnect. I see it. It's happening, and I think that there is a shift. There's a split happening right now in humanity where people are moving forward in the ways that society is moving forward and what's being told to us. This is what we do, this is how we're moving forward. But I think that the split is happening where people are realizing, and you see it all around, like the amount of like divorces happening, people separating. There's so much recalibration, let's say, in values and how we live and what we want to how we want to approach our day to day and like what really is important. Which I think is it's we're I mean we're in the age of Aquarius, the age of enlightenment. Like I think it's we're really moving into this era of people being like, I'm done. I'm done with this way of life that is not really serving me.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right. We better.
There's something really powerful about returning to materials and practices like we've been talking and cultures that predate this like modern design system. So for you, especially being in Colombia and going back, like how do your Colombian roots show up in your work today, even when, let's say the project isn't necessarily about like identity specifically?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm currently in Cali, and I've found just generally incredibly inspired by the city itself. I am staying in a neighborhood where, my aunts have lived for 30 years, in a neighborhood where my eldest brother was born, where my family, has had a relationship for many generations, and I feel very inspired by everything, by literally everything. The windows, the tiles on the floor, the color palettes on the houses, the flowers, the birds, and all of that kind of influences in one way or another. The color palettes that I use, I really love using color. Even the shapes that the the wrought iron gates have, they're shapes that I've been integrated into some creative practices. I'm working on one particular art project where I'm creating this tarot deck with
Mm.
characters inspired, or characters based on people in my life, and I'm using these tiles as part of the frames. I'm using the color palettes in the project itself. So I don't know if I fully articulate how it's impacting me or how it's influencing me, but I know that I will. And probably when I get back to Canada in April, I'll start to make sense of it a little bit more. I think I'm currently in the sauce, lost in the sauce. So it's hard to fully articulate, but the day to day is definitely having an effect.
I love to hear it. I totally understand what you're saying. I think that I was born here, but going back to Italy and being especially where my parents are from, they're from a village in the middle of nowhere, disconnected from, the world. And so going back, when I went back as a child, I didn't fully understand, but then going back as a teenager, I oh, they make so much more sense now, understanding them more holistically and where the roots are from. But going back, I'm Canadian, but culturally, I was grew up very Italian, and reconnecting with those roots, you really understand that. I know I'm not trying to dog on North America, but it's just like there's such a disconnect from community and culture in the ways that the rest of the world exists. And that I love hearing you, like when you're saying lost in the sauce, it really is that where you don't really know it until it's like later on when you can look back and say, oh, I see the influence, I see the redirect or the slight shifts in my approach, my own narratives, right?
Yeah, I've also really enjoyed seeing creatives here. There's a few kind of branding agencies and designers that are doing just some really inspiring work. Uh, and the context is completely different. Social media is completely different. All these
Hmm.
different things. We'll see. I'm at this point. I'm paying attention and just being very open and receptive, and I'm curious to see later on how it will affect my work.
I'm very excited for you just because, and like, we don't really know each other, let's be honest, but just to, as a creative, as somebody who I think, like I said, we have very similar approaches
Practices.
and just, and exactly. And so hearing what you're going through and what you're living right now, like that is going to be a huge, no pun intended, shift for you in the next chapter of your life. I think that as creatives, one of the things that you had said in your intake was like, you can't be a part-time creative. Like it's everything that we experience, everything that we go through, it feeds our own narratives. It really, and our how we express that
Mhm.
creativity, and having a true understanding of self, I think, is a big part of it. Like really, what is it? Who am I at this point in my life? I'm 38 years old this year, and it's like, okay, what is my life experience led me to, and how do I put that out there in a world in a way that is authentic to me as a person. And so,
Yeah.
on the topic of part-time creative, like, what do you say to people who are listening right now who feel that pull, but they're like scared to like say, "Forget, I'm doing it."
Just with the caveat that I even said from the beginning is like it is very much a privileged move, but build the resources you need, um, build a plan. Um, you know, I I don't think that you can be. I mean, yes, there has to be a way for you to create and to live, work a 9 to 5. Um, I'm sure that there are people that do it successfully. Not
Mhm.
everybody can. Um, there is a value for you to disconnect, eh, or actually rather connect to yourself and to those big questions, to be obsessed with it, uh, to allow yourself to be fully in the creative process, whether that's for your own personal projects or for something else. And that only comes when you're not, as I said, like answering Slack messages and being CC'd in 20 emails every other hour,
Mhm.
to that creative that wants to take the lead, that is ready to take the leap, is build your resources, start working on your relationships, start mapping out what your client list might be, and realize it might change. I had an idea of who my clients would be when I started. Maybe 10% of those people ended up actually, or that sector ended up becoming my clients. A whole range of people I hadn't even considered ended up actually being my collaborators and my clients. But start building your foundation. Start building your foundation. Start building um, what your services might be. You need a website. You definitely need a website. You definitely need ways to communicate what your projects and your values are. Make sure you have a good portfolio. Start getting testimonials. Start getting all that kind of stuff. That's what's going to help you. Relationships. That's the most important part. Your relationships are what is going to take you forward. Yeah.
It's so true. I think, to me, the biggest thing has been relationships. I feel like the only way, you know, somebody said this recently, and I think this was somebody I talked to. I don't know. At this point, I've interviewed so many people, I'm like starting to forget who said what. But it was along the lines of, you can say like, I built this thing from the ground up, and I'm, I'm the one behind GeoGraphic, right? It's just me. But there's no shot in hell that I would have gotten to where I am today without relationships, community, the people around me who have supported me in wanting to work with me, supporting my business, etc. There's no way, you can say like I did this, but it would be nothing without the people in my life.
When you do kind of jump out on your own, it's also humbling, right? um you're like,
Understatement.
yeah, as I mentioned, there are people who you thought would be your collaborators and your clients who you don't hear from at all, and then there are people who really step up and who believe in your cause, believe in your project, believe in what you're
Hmm.
building, and you end up building really strong relationships. And yeah, you're right, you don't build this on your own, you build this with others, and you also help other people build their own projects
For
and
them.
their own, for them. Your peers are really important. uh, what you're doing, I think, with this podcast is really cool. You need to uplift other designers. Other designers are not your competitors, they're your partners.
100%.
You get to know their work, talk to them about design, talk to them about creativity, and continue to build that network. Quite often, we see things from a scarcity model, and we see other people as our
Yes.
competitors, and that actually just shrinks the industry, where we can continue to see each other as partners, as collaborators, advocate for each other, advocate for good treatment of contractors, build a community, freelance community, that is strong and resilient. Like, we need to do that.
Oh, 100%. I approached, you know, I started this project in the fall of 2024, where I started really thinking about, what is this going to look like? What is it going to be? And obviously it's evolved. But the ethos was there from day one. And so I've reached out to a wide array of people from all industries, all types of work, and a few designers, because to me, there's validity in talking to people in my field. And I had one girl who I'm going to have her on eventually, but she said she does what we do. She works in branding, and she was like, I don't know, like not because I don't want to do it, but because I like, wouldn't that be like me stepping on your turf, let's say, of like competition, because this is your podcast, like. And I go, whoa, I'm like, I'm not looking at it like that at all. I said, you are not
Hmm.
my competition. And I love her work. She's so talented. She's amazing. Um, but I said, I'm like, I'm not looking at it that way. Like, having you on to me doesn't mean that you're going to take work from me. That's crazy. I said, if anything, it's like, this is about you and me coming together and talking about what it is to create, what it is to, and so I hear you on that. I'm like, I don't see anyone as competition, because everyone has their lane and what they do, what they focus on. And I have mine, and there's so much to go around. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that way.
Yeah, and I mean, in something like this, like a podcast where you're talking about design and educating, hopefully parts of it make it beyond the design sphere. What we need to do is open more markets. So people come to
Hmm.
you saying, "I need a logo." Maybe another client, or we can build more of a culture where people are like, "No, I need a branding system, a visual identity system," and uh, people beginning to recognize that. Yeah, I think we open that together.
100%. And also, to me, it's this thing of, if someone comes to me and I think, whether it's like ethically, culturally, whatever, with the industry, and I'm like, I know someone else actually creatively who could be much more aligned
Yeah.
with what your ethos is, I'm going to refer you, versus me taking it on and, having something that's a disconnect. I can't fully give 100% of myself to be able to tell that story, because it's not part of my, you know, woven story, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. I completely agree.
Looking back, like, what would you say, once you took the leap? Because I want to go back to the beginning of you leaving corporate. What did taking that leap give you that, you looking back, you're like, staying safe never would have gotten me to where I'm at today?
One of my core life goals was to be able to spend half of the year in Colombia, where I'm from, with my family. That was at the top. I don't believe in this kind of like digital nomad life. I think it's extractive. My goal was to come home, was to be able to come home. I would
Hmm.
have never been able to do that if I stayed in a 9 to 5 job. It would have been so limiting. The idea of having 2 weeks to go visit your family a year, that's just insanity. Those are the parts that where I say it's not human and it is not humane. You're having to disconnect yourself. And you say you live in Toronto, most people that live in Toronto have family elsewhere, and you only have 2 weeks to go see them. That doesn't make
No.
any sense. That doesn't make any sense. I think that's the biggest one. That's at the very, very top. It's nice to have this conversation from a very, very warm. There's a hummingbird outside. There's a guava tree outside. There's a palm tree outside. I can see, the hill where my aunt's house is on my window. So that I would have never been able to do that. Cali, in particular, is a city that is often missed by people who come to Colombia. People go to Medellin, Cartagena, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. Cali is a city often missed, but it's a city so full of craft and design and printmaking, and it has just a really uh, big history of people that do fantastic work, and I'm happy to start to share that. I'm doing that a lot with my photography lately. Um, that's a huge opportunity to reconnect with this.
I usually don't like questions like this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where do you see the next few years for you? Like, where do you see whether it's your personal or professional path going?
I think let's say this last year is a proof of concept. This last year is you can do it. Now it's making it sustainable, making sure that I can keep doing it. Um, as I mentioned, I want to be coming back to Cali in particular every year. I've been connecting with the creative community here. I want to build more relationships with the creative community here. I want to find ways to bring resources here, um,
Hmm.
work with creative communities here, um, continue to work with Guadua, find more opportunities to build with this material and create that Colombian. Sorry, there's a bird outside, and,
I don't
and
even hear
have
it.
that. There's and start continue to build up those relationships between Canada and Colombia. Those are intentions. We'll see how much of it happens.
It's like anything, right? As long if the intention is there, that's usually all you need with the follow through, which is just moving forward. I think that's all that really needs to
Do the
happen, right?
work. Do the
Hmm.
work.
So we are coming to the end, and I would just want to say thank you so much for doing this. Like, this has been an amazing conversation. I think this is our first like true, real chat, and we got
In the
right
weeds,
into it
yeah.
right off the bat. And that this is how I know like you're my people. Like we are, we come from the same place of like let's just get to it. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed, as I meant, I knew I was going to enjoy this chat. So thank you so much.
So I want to ask you, we dig into all the deep stuff in our chats, but I always like to end off on a fun little question that I ask every one of my guests. Thinking about your life and your work, or just like who you are as a human, what would you say is the most on brand thing about you?
So I'm thinking about several things with this question. I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier, that it's hard to separate yourself from your business, right? Like
Hmm.
you are one essentially. I think that like finally quitting everything and deciding to be an artist is pretty on brand. I'm also, part of me also resists the idea that we are brands. We're not brands. We're people. We're,
100%.
I think, and it becomes really hard when you are a freelancer, when you have your own business, because you do end up becoming your brand in many different ways. Anyways, I think being here is pretty on brand, or at least what I imagined um, my life would be. So
I'll say this as a final tack on to what you just said. Years ago, I was part of the CGLCC, or now
yeah,
CQCC, their mentorship program. I did it, the year long, however long those months are with the program. And the one thing that my mentor said to me that really stuck with me, and that I pulled forward was, Gio, you want to make sure that the way you operate your business is how you operate as a human. those two
Hmm.
things aren't necessarily interchangeable. They have to be as one, especially as a, the person leading the brand. And that is something that I've like really taken to heart, and it's proven to be very in my own version of success, like if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 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 for sure. It's true.
Hmm.
Yeah. Treat, and that's the part about, like, uh, be human with
Yeah.
your clients, have that human connection with your client. Don't be robotic. Uh, you know, yeah, for sure.
So, to anybody listening who would potentially want to work with you, collaborate with you, connect with you, follow your story online, where can they find you?
Yeah. My work, my portfolio can be seen at narrativeshiftstudio.com.
Mhm.
My foot, and you can follow also me on Instagram, or Narrative Shift on Instagram, Narrative Shift Studio on Instagram. And my photography and more of my artistic and personal projects are at Juan Pablo's Portraits on Instagram.
And I'll say this as somebody who follows all of it, definitely go connect, because seeing your work, seeing your life through the lens of, a screen has been very engaging. I feel like, like I said, keep doing what you're doing. I love all the stuff that you're doing. It's very inspiring.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of work, sometimes really hard, but altogether very meaningful. And it's nice to have an opportunity to connect with other creatives and to talk shop.
And to anybody who wants to connect with the podcast, you can follow me on any of the streaming platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Send us an email at graphiccontentpod@gmail.com. Pablo, I want to say thank you one last time for doing this. This has been amazing. I'm so thankful to have you as part of the graphic content family, and we'll talk soon.
Chat soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much.